We got a breaking news story, folks. We got a brand new temporary restraining order coming out of Illinois, issued by Judge Sarah Ellis to stop journalists and members of the clergy and First Amendment protesters from being hit with the full lethality of riot control weaponry. And when I give you the list of the things that the temporary restraining order has now stopped the Trump administration from using on the streets of Illinois, it will make your head pop off when you realize that this is the level of military firepower being used against American citizens, many of them journalists and members of the clergy who are doing their job on the streets. And I got the videos to prove it. Let's get to the temporary restraining order. Temporary restraining order issued just moments ago. Let me read it to you. This was a suit that was brought on the 6th of October by the Chicago Headline Club, various members of the press and free press in Chicago, and members of the clergy and protesters against them being pepper sprayed, pepper balled, shot with searing munition, tear gassed after identifying themselves or wearing the cloth of the clergy as they're protesting legitimately in D.C. See, they're mixing everything up because the military and the federalized National Guard are not ready to handle civil liberties. They have not been trained on constitutional due process, equal protection, and other civil liberties rights. So they're mixing everybody together. If you're in a crowd, if you're a journalist, if you're a member of the clergy, if you're a protester, you're all the same. Pepper spray doesn't care what you're wearing. A pepper ball to the face or the car of a journalist, that doesn't care as it's being launched. The human being should care on the other side, but they're not properly trained for this. This is why we're fighting so hard to keep nationalized and federalized troops out of American cities, especially the blue ones. We just had an oral argument today in the Ninth Circuit. Two Trump judges, and it's not, I said judges, and it's not looking good for keeping these troops out. But I think if anything, this order demonstrates to you why it's so important for federal judges to protect us from our own president. Here's what the restraining order says. It is ordered that the defendants, except for Trump, their agents and assigns are enjoined, blocked in this federal district from dispersing, arresting, threatening to arrest, threatening, or using physical force against any person who they know or reasonably should know is a journalist, right? It gets worse. Issuing a crowd dispersal order requiring any person to leave a public space that they believe should be there. Using riot control weapons, little d, including kinetic impact projectiles. Everything I'm going to read to you right now is being used by American citizens against other American citizens, including those who have identified themselves appropriately as journalists and members of the clergy. Kinetic impact projectiles, compressed air launchers, capsaicin spray, CS spray, CN gas, or other chemical irritants, 40 millimeter munitions launchers, less lethal shotguns, less lethal specialty impact chemical munitions, controlled noise and light distraction devices, right? Electronic control weapons on members of the press, protest, or religious practitioners. We've got clips, folks, from Chicago that were used as part of the record for this particular case. Let's show the clip of the
Alright, so we have some good news today because a judge has blocked Trump's attempt to deploy the National Guard to Chicago. She's granted a temporary restraining order for 2 weeks while she considers the rest of the lawsuit. She said that there's no substantial evidence of any danger of rebellion brewing in Illinois, which is really going to piss off Trump because he's been saying that the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois, who are both Democrats, should be jailed. And it's the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, who has been the only one that is brave enough to say that Trump is unhealthy and needs to be removed under the 25th Amendment. So, of course, Trump would be saying that that guy needs to be put in jail. And the judge is saying, yeah, it looks like Trump's attempt to deploy the National Guard to Chicago is based on his animus towards Illinois elected officials. Almost like Trump has been posting insults to those elected officials all over Truth Social for weeks. And crime is literally down in Chicago, while he calls it a hellhole. Friendly reminder that the Posse Comitatus Act means that the federal government cannot just send the military wherever they want for domestic law enforcement. Never let the Republicans try to claim that they're the states' rights party. They love trampling on states' rights.
Serious breaking news. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General who defeated Trump in court, has been indicted by the Justice Department. Huge blunder, huge mistake. This is worse than indicting Comey, okay? They're going to lose out of the starting gate, meaning Trump and the DOJ. And this is just going to diminish their character, their judgment, and really the need to remove them from their positions. And that means Pam Bondi. Now, she was indicted by a grand jury, but that's easy because you only need the one side, which is the prosecution, to bring it to a grand jury. And the grand jury, if it's kind of straightforward, like a simple, very explainable charge, and they'll indict. But it will be tossed out of court for sure. Because basically what they're doing is they can't get her on anything, so they indicted her on bank fraud on Thursday. So let's see them try to prove this. They tried to do it to Adam Schiff and other people by saying that they took out mortgages on second homes but claimed that they were their primary residences. And in all those cases, it was proven that no, they did not apply for the loans under false pretenses. Lindsay Halligan, who's the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, personally presented the case to the grand jury on Thursday, as it was reported. However, U.S. attorneys do not typically present to a grand jury. According to The Guardian, the move is Trump's latest effort to weaponize the Department of Justice to punish political rivals. It comes 2 weeks after Halligan secured charges against James Comey, the former FBI director. Career prosecutors prepared a memo in that case outlining why charges were not warranted. Comey pled not guilty on Wednesday, and they are about to ask the judge to throw that case out. This is just going to be a total embarrassment for Trump and to Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice. And I hope the judges start punishing them for these bogus cases.
So last Saturday, a Trump-appointed judge by the name of Karen Emmergut in Oregon told the administration, you cannot federalize the National Guard to send them into Portland. First and foremost, the judge, again appointed by Trump, said this because, one, you don't have the authority to do that, and two, there's nothing wrong in Portland. All of the information that you have shown me, because yes, this was brought in a lawsuit, is fake. You're looking at fake footage, you're sending fake pictures, you're making fake talking points about crime. None of this is real, the judge told them. And therefore, you cannot send the National Guard from Oregon into Portland. And so the administration, that same day the ruling came down, said, fine, we won't send the National Guard from Oregon into Portland. I'm just going to send the National Guard from states like Texas and California into Oregon. And the judge got pissed. See, this is what's so funny about it. Everybody knows about the judge's ruling. What most people do not know is that 24 hours after that, the judge had to hold an emergency hearing, because she got pissed that Donald Trump effectively violated her order. And she told DOJ lawyer, what's his name, Eric Hamilton, that you guys are misconstruing what was in this order, okay? Because I didn't technically specify the Oregon National Guard. So you're twisting it to say things that I didn't say, and you can't send any National Guard into Portland.
I'm joined now by the Attorney General of California, Rob Bonta. Thanks so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Brian.
So we've got some breaking news now within the last 24 hours here, a new temporary restraining order. Can you explain what just happened in court?
Absolutely. California, along with Oregon and Portland, went into court over the weekend on shortened time, seeking an emergency order preventing the deployment of California National Guard to Oregon. And just 24 hours earlier, on Saturday, the same judge in the District of Oregon, federal judge Emmergut, had granted a restraining order saying that the Oregon National Guard could not be federalized and deployed to Portland because there was no factual basis for it. It violated the sovereign rights of the state of Oregon, threatened public safety, and for other reasons. And having received that order, the federal government, being told that the Oregon National Guard cannot be deployed to Oregon, in their wisdom, decided that they should deploy the California National Guard to Oregon, although the judge had just said that the facts on the ground did not justify National Guard being deployed. So I listened to the entire hearing last night. The judge was miffed and perplexed, to say the least, about regarding the administration's position here. Told the lawyers for the federal government that they are officers of the court, and explain why the deployment of California National Guard does not violate her order from 24 hours earlier. And she ruled from the bench. She ruled in our favor, granted the restraining order, and because the federal government had brought in the California National Guard after being told they can't federalize the Oregon National Guard, and because we pointed out that in just minutes before the hearing, the existence of a memo from Secretary Hegseth federalizing the Texas National Guard, 2,000 of them, and ordering 400 of them to go to Portland and Chicago. We asked for a broad order, and we said it appears that the federal government is pursuing this whack-a-mole approach. If they're told they can't bring in the Oregon National Guard, they'll try to bring in the California National Guard. If you tell them tonight that they can't bring in the California National Guard, it appears they'll try to bring in the Texas National Guard. And if you tell them they can't bring in the Texas National Guard, who knows what is lined up next to bring in. So we asked for an order preventing any National Guard from any state in the District of Columbia from being deployed to Oregon. The judge granted that appropriately broad order, and was very strong in her treatment of the federal government. Just 24 hours earlier, she had said, this is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. And that the president's determination that the National Guard was appropriate was untethered from the facts. And so I think that really says it all. Trump is not a king. He's not above the law. He cannot treat the National Guard as his royal guard to deploy and to do his bidding when he wants, where he wants, for whatever reason he wants. And we took a strong position, and we blocked him twice in 24 hours.
Does it look like within the last 24 hours, the Trump administration is complying with this order?
From what we can tell, yes. So far, who knows what is going to happen next. We think that there are National Guard from Texas and maybe other places on the way to Chicago. The judge's order from the District of Oregon only applies to Oregon. So Chicago, Illinois, has brought a case already trying to prevent the National Guard from being brought into Illinois. But so far, we don't have any reports that any California National Guard are in Portland exercising any official duties in contravention of the court order. If we do, we would take immediate steps to enforce the order, perhaps move towards contempt. This judge is not happy with the way the federal administration has treated her first order, and I don't think that she would take too kindly to any violations of her order. But so far, all we're aware of is compliance. We'll keep our ear to the ground. But we are moving towards a preliminary injunction hearing on October 29th. The temporary restraining order, which we secured, is for 14 days. And then we'll have a full trial on the merits combined with the preliminary injunction hearing on October 29th, and hopefully get a permanent order preventing the National Guard from being federalized and deployed to Oregon.
When we see Trump engage in these bad faith efforts to try and, figure out some justification to get these troops deployed, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, but does each subsequent case get more difficult? Like when a judge sees that Trump has no justification to do it in California and then has no justification to do it in Portland and gets blocked as he has in California, as he has in Portland, and then tries to do it in Chicago, does each subsequent case make it more difficult because a judge sees, to your point, that he's just doing whack-a-mole here, and he says, okay, I might not be able to do it in Portland, but then I'll just find some other city to be the target of my ire. Are judges wising up to what he's doing here?
I think so. I don't see how they can't be. And the District of Oregon federal judge, Judge Immergut, cited to Judge Breyer's order in California, clearly showing awareness of what he contemplated and how he analyzed the case and what he ruled on. And I think, judges are watching, of course,
Right.
What's happening. This is unprecedented stuff. And in this case in particular, to have a National Guard from a state where the governor does not want them deployed, and to federalize them, that's California, and to deploy them to another state where that governor doesn't want them deployed either.
Yeah.
That's never happened. We've seen federalization of a National Guard within a state be deployed. We've seen red states have their National Guard deployed into blue states, but we've never seen this combination of both a blue state that doesn't want the National Guard deployed and another blue state having that National Guard deployed into their state happen before. So, it seems like there's always an additional escalation that's dangerous, something unprecedented that's happening. And Judge Immergut very appropriately suggested and stated in the very opening of her order on Saturday, on the first temporary restraining order which was granted, that this is an issue about the relationship between the federal government and states and state sovereignty. It's about the relationship between the military and civilian law enforcement, and about the relationship between the judicial branch and the executive branch, and all of those very important bedrock constitutional principles are at play here. So this is high stakes stuff, and I'm sure judges are very aware of what's happening around the country, and will have that context and that knowledge if a case comes to them specifically.
Something striking that happened over the weekend was that Trump came forward and tried to convey this bogus idea that there is an insurrection happening in Portland. And I thought that word was interesting because I feel like he's trying to make his legal argument in the court of public opinion and try to manifest this idea into reality that there is some insurrection or rebellion happening. And the reason that word caught my attention is because there are one of three thresholds that need to be met in order to justify military deployment domestically, and that is that there is a foreign invasion, that there is some rebellion or insurrection, or finally that there is a failure of a local government to be able to effectuate federal law. And obviously none of those things are happening. The judge that you cited in Portland, Immergut, said that him using any of these justifications, I believe he said rebellion or insurrection, that him using this justification was untethered to reality. But can you talk about him trying to manifest into reality any of these three planks, given that needs to be the basis, the pretext that he needs to be able to send these troops into any of these cities?
Sure. He's always trying to state that there is an emergency, because when there's an emergency, the executive branch can secure additional authority and additional power. He wants that power. He wants that additional authority. And so he, as a figment of his imagination and not backed by the actual facts on the ground, he consistently states that there are invasions, emergencies, rebellions, the inability of the government to execute the federal law with the regular forces, all the things that would trigger more authority for the executive branch if true, but they're just not true. And the Judge Immergut, very compellingly pointed this out as the federal government attorneys in her court pointed to social media posts, to Truth Social posts from the president as their basis for the facts on the ground in Portland. And she said, that is not what is the determination of the facts. The facts are what the actual facts are on the ground. And there is no rebellion. There is no invasion. There is no inability to execute the law with the regular forces. And so thus there's no emergency powers. But Trump and Miller and Hegseth, they consistently try to talk past the judges to the court of public opinion, making their case, but not backed by facts. And it's irresponsible and inappropriate. And it is very appropriate that courts continue to be a place where if you're going to take a position, you need to bring the receipts, show the facts, show the proof, demonstrate that the facts on the ground are what you say in your Truth Social post. If you can't, and he couldn't, then you don't get the power that you seek. And so we went in with facts, we went in with the law, we prevailed, and according to the judge's order, it wasn't even close. But you are right that there's an ongoing attempt, and we will see more of it, of the Trump administration to try to convince and honestly not be honest with the American people that there's some sort of emergency when there's really not.
Can you speak for a moment about a letter that your office sent to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals at the end of September, so just a few days ago, about this idea that the Trump administration, that by virtue of paying Trump some deference in this Los Angeles case, knowing that there was the thinnest of all pretexts to be able to do so, that would actually invite him to abuse that deference even further in a place like Portland, which of course has indeed materialized.
Absolutely. You know, we're seeing Trump given an inch and taking a mile. And when offered some deference by the court, completely abusing it. And we had flagged this original June 7th order out of that deployed troops to California as one that that had no temporal or geographic limits, and that it didn't say just LA, it didn't say just California, it didn't just say just in June. It was broad, and we noticed that then, and we worried about it then, and then we wanted to reflag it for the court in a couple of days ago, because what we had feared came to pass. Trump used this deployment of troops in LA, literally 1,000 miles away from Portland, to deploy troops to Portland. And,
right.
And that is exactly the abuse of power that we feared, that Trump believed he had carte blanche to deploy National Guard anywhere around the country at any time. And it makes absolutely no sense that a early June set of circumstances in LA could lead to the deployment of troops in Portland 1,000 miles away 90 days later. It just makes no sense. But that's the broad, abusive, and unlawful reading that Trump is giving this order. And I'm glad that Judge Immergut saw through that and blocked them twice over the weekend.
And so do you think that mentioning that to the Ninth Circuit Court, as you've done, and saying, hey, look what happens when you give him an inch, he'll take a mile, he will abuse whatever deference you pay him, do you think that whereas the Ninth Circuit may have been willing previously, as far as the LA case is concerned, may have been willing to offer him, that deference, and look, they stayed Judge Breyer's order, so maybe there was a likelihood, as far as they were concerned, that Judge Breyer's order wasn't going to stand? Do you think that this changes the calculus now for the Ninth Circuit to see, look what us giving Trump a little bit of leeway is manifesting in real life here. It's giving him carte blanche in his mind to go and send troops into other cities completely untethered to reality. And maybe now, as we continue to consider this case, we should reconsider the facts as they're actually playing out.
I think that the Ninth Circuit will be very carefully policing the bounds of the deference and making sure that only appropriate deference is given, that it's not unlimited deference, that it's not absolute deference, that there are times, and I think Portland is that time, and I think, frankly, LA is that time as well, and we'll see how we do on appeal. I think we will prevail when that deference is, a bridge too far, or many bridges too far, when it's way beyond the deference owed. There is a legal modicum or sum of deference that is owed, but it is not absolute. And Trump has tried to turn, the legal deference that he is owed, which has limits, into unlimited absolute deference to do anything he wants, whenever he wants.
Right. And if even judges who he himself appointed are able to call that out, then I think it's as clear as day what he's trying to do. With that said, we'll leave it there. California Attorney General Rob Bonta, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Great to see you again.
Hey, Wisconsin, you're up. Important information coming out of Wisconsin right now. Today, a judge ordered that all residents must have their voter registration recertified before the next election. Your next election is a primary in February. And I'm going to go over what's in this article because it's important. So if you live in Wisconsin or know somebody who lives in Wisconsin, please stick around and share this with them. Waukesha County Circuit Judge Michael Maxwell said that Wisconsin residents must have their voter registration status reviewed before the next statewide election. His ruling requires the Wisconsin Election Commission, the WEC, to evaluate the current voter rolls and see whether any non-U.S. citizens are registered. He has also directed the state's regulatory agency for election law to make sure that all new registrants are lawful citizens. He goes on to say, election officials should match information contained in the State Department of Transportation files or find matches by other lawfully available means, but how officials can verify those who don't have driver's licenses was not outlined. Maxwell maintained that the WEC was violating state and federal statutes by maintaining an election system that potentially allows individuals on the voter rolls who may not be lawfully entitled to cast a vote in Wisconsin. Tom Tiffany is the Republican person running for governor of Wisconsin, and he's like, yeah, this is what I've been fighting for. And your Attorney General, Josh Kaul, K-A-U-L, who was going to run for governor, has decided to stay and run for his seat again. Attorney General immediately filed for a stay, and the same judge said, I'll give you a court date on October 31st for that, saying that if he issued a stay right now, that would be a violation of the law, which, what the fuck are you talking about? Anyway, I'm kind of torn. Like, let him do it. I seriously am torn, because they're going to see that there's really nobody voting that shouldn't be voting. If they're dead and they're still on the voter rolls, they're not voting. And you're certainly not going to find a shit ton of, undocumented immigrants signing themselves up to vote when they're just trying to hide from being fucking deported. They're not going to put their name on the voter rolls, you dumbasses. Anyway, that's what's going on as of today in Wisconsin.